everybody. Welcome to InPsight Radio. I am your host, Danielle Egnew, and you are a fly on the wall to everywhere. How are you guys? Oh, did you have a good 4th of July? Did you? I sure did. I didn't actually get to see all of the fireworks that I wanted to because I had planned on going out of town, and then I didn't really get out of town, and then I was just kind of stuck with a bunch of fireworks I couldn't shoot off in town. So they're unsafely sitting in my garage right now until next year. And I'm going to have a big old fireworks extravaganza next year. I love fireworks, you guys, which is ironic because, we're celebrating, of course, the independence of the United States of America by stuff made in China. I love it. How American. So anyway, hi, you guys. I tell you what, we are getting into July here, and what is this? July 10th. So we're going through and, we've got a lot to look forward to towards the end of this month. I still feel a ton of UFO disclosure information, UAP, they call them UAPs now, you guys, so we have to be cool. I still feel a ton of UAP disclosure, which is going to be huge for everybody. Also, I think we're going to have a lot of opportunities here to really be able to get out there and discuss UAP information in a more intelligent way. And I'm just feeling a ton of stuff coming. This is big government disclosure somehow. I'm seeing military and Congress people. So we'll see how this plays out, but I'm feeling like it's going to get done sometime in this month, which hopefully it will. We'll see. We'll see what time tells. But hopefully this will get done. And in the meantime, we just have all of this amazing opportunity to talk about, and this is my segue. Do you like my segue? My segue from UAP disclosure is all about illusion, right? And today's podcast is called The Problem with Pretending. Yeah. We've been laboring under quite a bit of illusion. And I'm sure if you paid attention at all to the world, you're going to notice that ever since about 2017, we've had a lot of really weird perceptions hitting reality. And, and I use the words perceptions and reality loosely because my perception of reality is going to be super different from some of my dear conservative friends here in Montana. Their perception of reality is really different than mine. So I should say the problem with pretending is when you discard what's in front of you in order to, at that point, adhere to a reality which may or may not actually be existing. And that's why we call it pretending. Like when you're a little kid, you put up a big, sheet fort in the living room and you have all your beans as money and you make this giant fort and that's the only reality that matters. And in the fort, you are the sultan of the world and you own a unicorn and you're cooking dinner on pieces of cardboard that are china plates. That's called pretending. And you very much know that none of this is real. You know that. Yet at the same time, you are prepared to pretend it's real. That's the word pretending. And so the problem with pretending is when we absolutely see that what we're looking at is not reality, but we're going to pretend it is anyway. And the problem with that is if you are a person in power, this gets really awkward. Like the American government pretending that UAPs really aren't a thing. Well, they haven't actually been doing that for a while. And as a ufologist, I follow all of the different twists and pops of our military. You've probably been noticing that our United States military, especially the Navy and the Air Force, have been releasing, really since 2010, all kinds of infrared video about UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomenon. And so the reason they don't call them unidentified flying objects is sometimes the things that they see aren't flying. They're hovering or they just appear and they disappear. And that gets really, really weird, right? So it's not really an issue of flying. It's about something appearing in our skies that was not created by human beings. So for a long time, the government pretended that those didn't exist to the people of the United States and the world. Well, not really to the world because other world governments know that UAPs are real. But to the people of the United States, they surely were pretending that none of this was a thing. So that gets awkward and it just gets weird. We've also had political figures pretending all kinds of things. Donald John Trump, former President Donald J. Trump, pretending that an election was stolen from him. If I may be so bold, pretending he won an election, but he did. At least he did according to the polls. So, he did. But wow, that was awfully strange how that happened. At exactly 2% over what was recommended in the margins. And it's so strange how Donald J. Trump's campaign then turned around and accused Dominion voting machines of changing votes. It's like they literally accused every single person of doing every single thing their campaign did. Seriously. So that's pretending that you are the fan favorite. Now, obviously, technically on paper, Donald J. Trump won the Electoral College on paper or on digital paper, and he became the president of the United States. So as he lost in a screaming landslide of get the F out in the last election, of course, he's been stumping this whole time that stop the steal. I'm pretending I won. He knows he didn't win. And what's going to be coming up later in this month, are some really hardcore, not just indictments, but they're going to be finding him guilty later on. And that's not going to come until September, October. Some of these things aren't even going to come till next year, but they're going to find him. They're going to indict him and find him reasonably guilty enough to be indicted on all kinds of stuff. And you guys, none of this is new news. Okay. I've been talking about this literally since 2017, but I mean, taxes, business practices, now that this January 6th thing is hit, he's going to get hit up for conspiracy, to really make people riot. I don't know what they're going to call it, but the word conspiracy keeps coming forward. So, I mean, this is all stuff that's going to get handed to Donald J. Trump because he's pretending like none of this is happening. The problem with pretending is that eventually somebody who is not pretending with you is going to come up and say, hey, guess what? That's not real. And then it gets really super awkward, right? Because you're like, well, in my pretend fort made of goodwill, cheese, and sheets, I'm the president still. Even though this time the Electoral College said, well, no, you're not. No, you're not. So the problem with pretending is it creates an illusion. And we've been laboring under illusion for a long time, really since the Industrial Revolution, really since the conquest of this continent from the European settlers and colonizers. We have been we've been pretending we're not part of nature. Well, that's caused some problems. I don't know if you've noticed that, but, clearly the planet is like, you guys, I'm really, really hot right now because we've got a lot of carbon emissions. And the carbon problems, you guys, as we all know, I'm not going to labor the podcast with this, but the carbon problems started back in the Industrial Revolution. I mean, there was zero emissions when all this coal was being burned and it was just barfing into the sky. So this has been a problem for quite a long time. So we're pretending it's not an issue. We're pretending it's not an issue for indigenous peoples to die because we're killing them, say the settlers, say the colonizers, say the people who want the land. We're pretending it's not an issue culturally for hundreds of indigenous nations to be wiped out, destroyed, victimized, crushed, had their beliefs stripped out of them, had their hair cut off, had their way of life taken from them, herded onto tiny patches of land. We're pretending that really didn't hurt these human beings. And we're pretending they'll just be fine if they just say a prayer to the white, blonde, blue-eyed Jesus, and we just tick along from there. And, it's pretending. Because what's in front of us is a group of humans who are suffering along the trail of tears, who are dying, whose way of life is being absolutely extricated from them and crushed into the ground. And we're pretending that's okay because we want, the land they live on. It's absolutely hideous. So whenever we pretend that something's, okay, or something that is happening, or something is happening that's not happening, the problem with that is eventually consequences do come forward. And the problem with pretending is that at some point, grandma comes along into the living room where you've built your cheese and unicorn and sheet fort. And grandma starts saying, hey, come out for dinner. And we're, of course, we're 5. So we truly believe that on our cardboard plates, we have prime rib and we have, you're 5. So you have Jell-O and a Snickers bar and a bowl full of Cheerios, except the Cheerios is actually Lucky Charms, right? So you blow off grandma. No, grandma, I'm fine. I'm eating dinner already. Grandma comes around. Dinner's getting cold. Grandma's getting tired of the game. She comes around and says, dinner is ready and it's getting cold. You need to come out of the fort. And you say, Grandma, I am serving the king of the universe in my sultan court and a unicorn and cheese. And I'm not coming out my fort because we're all having dinner. Your grandma gets sick of it. And what does she do? Grandma just starts taking hold of the sheets and just ripping them off the furniture. And there goes your whole world, right? There goes the ceiling of your pretend universe. It just whips up off the top of you. You get that rush of what the heck just happened? My bubble just got popped. And there's grandma simultaneously trying to look mad and trying not to smile and saying, dinner is ready. Come on, Sultan. Come on, unicorn. Come on, happy piece of cheese. Dinner is ready. This is what happens when we pretend. Because at some point, the individual on the outside of the illusion is going to pull the blanket, it's going to pull the sheet, and it's time for us to go to the dinner table. It's time for us to clean up our mess. It's time for us to put Mr. Cheese and Unicorn and Fake Sultan to bed. Well, that's easier to do when you're 5 years old. It's tougher to do when you're 70 some odd years old and you're the former president of the United States who's grip on reality is getting really shaky. Donald Trump is not an idiot and he's not crazy. He is a bit delusional because of the lifestyle that he's lived for 70 some odd years. You and I, quite frankly, would both probably be delusional too if everybody gave us everything and kissed our butts and told us we were amazing chronically just to get our money. We wouldn't know what reality was outside of that, okay? So here we got Donald Trump. He's going to be facing indictments, a wall of them. And they're going to come one right after the other. And I know I've been saying this for many, many years. However, gang, we can't pretend forever. You can't pretend forever. At some point, if your illusion has hurt enough people, somebody's going to just rip the sheet off and expose you down there, eating on cardboard plates and trading beans. And that's what Donald Trump has been doing for years. Now, this is where this gets hard. Because Donald Trump invited millions of people into his fort. And millions of people were already pretending at that point anyway. So it's like having one of those Dungeons and Dragons conventions in the 80s where some of the players would kind of lose touch with reality and they'd really believe they were a wood elf or they would believe they were a house gnome. And actually, as a sidebar, I think a lot of the people who played D&D back in the day probably had some elemental genome and really related with those characters from ancient pieces of their DNA. So probably a lot of that spoke to some folks. And I'm sure there were just some folks escaping reality and wanted to play the Demigorgon. I don't know. But the problem with this is that here's Donald John Trump in a fort made of sheets saying, I'm still the president. This was stop the steal. Literally, I know there's a lot of you that think I'm full of beans. Fort beans. But you guys, I'm telling you, there is no way in spiritual physics that somebody can get away with telling such myths truths and just get away with it. It's not going to, you don't need to be a psychic to know this, but I can see down the timelines and he is going to get nailed for his role on January 6th. And it's going to be a big accusation. I couldn't tell you exactly what it is, but it's going to be a honker. And when the honker comes out, I've had a lot of people say to me, well, now hold on. So say Trump gets indicted, I don't think this is going to hurt him in the polls. It's not going to shake off his supporters will double down. Well, his supporters will double down because they're all in the illusion with him. They must believe. You guys, like, look how unhappy folks are in America right now. People have to believe that one of America's biggest, most successful shell game, Ponzi scheme, con artist people, Donald Trump, is like a lifetime of that behavior, is actually anointed by Jesus Christ. People are so desperate to have a reflection of their own belief system that they will project that belief system onto this person. And Donald Trump is not a bad person. Donald Trump, I know there's some of you that believe he is. I don't believe he is. I believe he is 100%, he's 100% the product of how he was raised, as we all are, okay? So you might like him, you might not like him, but the fact of the matter is, this guy, how could he think any differently with how he was raised? There's no way. So the problem is, when you're raised to believe that what you do has no consequences, and also when that is your reality, and you also have a legal team that gets you out of absolutely everything, you stop having any kind of integrity, and you just live out of a very lizard brain desire to satiate your own needs. And it's really sad. Like when I look at Donald Trump, I get sad because he wasn't a stupid person. He was just someone that learned that he could take his charisma and pull the wool over people's eyes. And instead of using that kind of emotional and, quite honestly, psychic intelligence, and he has a lot of psychic intelligence, instead of using that to inspire, he chose to use it to feed himself. He pretended he won this election. And he knew that his fan base would stick with him. So there are going to be all kinds of indictments coming down. Part of this is related to January 6th. And even after, and it's a big heavy hitter what's coming down. It's a big accusation in January 6th involvement. His people still will not abandon him because he is the last bridge they have to pretending that someone heard them. So let's just kind of, the problem with pretending is eventually reality catches up with you. So is grandma actually really, really furious with the little kids in the fort because they didn't stop playing? She might be a little irritated that they didn't listen to her, but grandma's not mad. I mean, she might be a little mad, but she's not really mad, especially when she, rips off the sheet and there's the kids wrapped in towels and have, towels wrapped on their head because they're playing Aladdin. And I mean, grandma's not mad. She's realizing that they were so into their illusion, she has to shake them out of it. So here's what I would tell everybody. The problem with pretending for the people pretending is it is a really harsh wake up to what the rest of society is experiencing outside of that fort, outside of that sheet tent in the living room. And there's a shock to the adult psyche that pretends so hard that it goes into what we call delusion. And the problem with Donald Trump, in certain ways, he knows he didn't win this election. He darn well knows it. Yet he must persist in this to the point where he's walking the line of a delusion. Now, when I look into Donald Trump, I don't see that he is deluded. He is deluded about the fact that he honestly thinks none of this is going to stick to him. He honestly does believe that through all of these indictments, and there are so many coming, and they're coming one after the other, I see later on. But I mean, they're coming hardcore down the pike here. And when this hits him, he is still going to be unwilling to just accept that he has no help. And I still see the former president of the United States, Donald John Trump, as a flight risk for this country. I mean, when it finally hits him that, oh my God, nobody's going to stick up for me. Oh my God, I'm not going to get out of this. Oh my God, they seriously are going to pin me to the wall. That's going to be the time where at the very 11th and 9/10 hour, we got to watch him for splitting the country and heading to places like the Middle East and Russia specifically. So we're not there yet, but he's not there yet because he's still laboring under this delusion. At this point, it is a delusion that he's going to be fine, even though he's aware that he's been pretending. Another section of our country that's really going to be laboring under this pretending are those folks who do not accept that there is life in other parts of the universe. And gang, I mean, the mathematical probability of us being the only life on the planet Earth is so staggeringly low. It's not even a thing. I mean, we are not alone out there. And I think most thinking people recognize this. There are some folks that have a hard time with this. I think it scares them. There's a lot of really religious people that believe that demons are aliens and posing as aliens. There are people who believe that science was simply created to challenge the followers of God, to be a gotcha, to see if you believe science or God with blind faith. No kidding. There's a whole section of humanity, you guys, right now, who really truly believe, and I'm going to call it pretending, but this might actually be a delusional issue. They really believe that the earth was created 5,000 years ago, and then God sped up time to the end times and then sped back time so many billion years just to put dinosaurs here, to speed up time, to plant fake dinosaurs that God had spun forward and back in time just to plant in the earth, because the earth, remember, has only been here for 5,000 years, except for the part where God spun time backwards billions of years to plant the dinosaurs, to see if people would believe science or believe Genesis. Like, is that not the biggest gotcha you've ever heard? Like, God would really do that. I'm going to create some fake timelines and put some fossils in the earth and see if you believe in the fossils or you believe in me. Because I'm a sociopath. And my name is Petty God. I am Petty God. I mean, swear to God, that's like some kind of crud that Donald Trump's dad would have pulled on him, which is why we ended up with poor Trump. That poor guy, man. God. If he ever goes to prison, which he will be found guilty on all these charges, and what they're going to do with him, I mean, they're not going to smack him in a regular prison because he is the former president of the United States. And so he could be kidnapped or extorted or any number of things could happen to him in prison that would jeopardize national secrets. So I don't see he'd go to prison. But if he's anywhere where anybody can ever get visitors, I'm going to visit him. I just want to talk to him, man. I want to talk to him about how damaged his heart is. Man, I do. I know he's caused a lot of damage and all the things, but it wasn't just him. It was Russia that emboldened him. We're also going to find out, by the way, and this is the problem with pretending, Russia pretended they thought that Donald John Trump was an amazing human being. They realized he was a financial asset, and they realized that he would be easy to manipulate through his ego. Now Trump was never a Russian spy. That's not true. But the Russian government did realize that Trump was manipulatable way a long time ago. They realized this in the 80s. So they started working on this guy forever ago, talking about how he should be president. Seriously. And I think we're going to find out. It's not out yet, but we are going to find out. There's going to be Russian assets that have crossed over and become citizens of the United States. And they're going to come forward and talk about how Trump has been groomed as an asset for 30 years. It's just a thing. So we'll find that out too. Now, Trump was not willingly being a Russian spy. Yet because of this big hole he has in his baby heart, because his dad was such a monster, and his dad was really kind of crazy, you guys, to him, that he had to live up to this person who, he couldn't live up to. His dad thought he was not the smart brother. Because of that, Trump pretended from day one. And the Russian government realized, oh my God, this guy's been an illusion for a long time. He's easy to pick off. The Russian, oh man, they're smart and psychic over there. I tell ya, we need to just figure out how to get Vladimir Putin to step down and just calm the world down, and in a while be able to have some sort of, once Putin is no longer in charge, have some sort of positive relationship with Russia as a culture and the people. The people are brilliant. The culture is heavily psychic and spiritual. We just have some authoritarian problems right now. So hopefully that'll get worked out. But anyway, speeding up to UFOs, what does this have to do with UFOs? Well, if you are someone who believes and pretends that we are the only life in the universe, if we're someone who believes that God put the gotcha down of dinosaurs and just to trick us to see if we believe science or God, and that's a lot of pretending to make the world make sense to us, right? So we're going to have bona fide people coming out and saying, hey, guess what? ETs are real. And I mean, I've been seeing for years and years, we have bodies of off-world beings that have been kept preserved. We have all of their off-world technology that we still can't reverse engineer, even though we keep trying. And this is what I study in ufology. So if we're pretending none of this is real and we have somebody get on in front of Congress or go to the president or whatever they're going to do for this disclosure thing that I keep feeling, and they get out there and they talk about the fact that, hey, guess what? UAPs are a thing. It's all real. This really triggers people who are pretending that we are the only life in the universe and who are only putting us back 5,000 years. And I don't even know where they get that number because that's not even accurate to the book of Genesis, but whatever. Genesis is older than 5,000 years, but whatever. Some number they pulled. So the problem with pretending is dealing with reality when the facts begin to present themselves that don't work out with your narrative. And we're going to have a big crisis of faith in this country. And when people have their faith rocked, this is when we see fear. Two things happen when people have their reality challenged. One, there's disbelief and just an utter shutdown. Or two, there's rage, anger, and fear. I guess there's three. Or three, people, look at the facts and try to adjust their reality. But usually that's the last ditch of A and B there. So we're going to have a lot of people, especially as we come forward with the UAP stuff, that are just going to tune it the frick out. Now, you might be thinking, Danielle, no, this isn't going to happen. I mean, if the government really does come forward and admit that we have UAPs or UAP debris or alien remains frozen in a meat locker somewhere, I don't know, then wouldn't people be engaged with that? Actually, I'm looking ahead in the timelines and I am not really seeing it make much ripple at all. There are people who already accept this to be true. And then there are people who just don't believe it and they think it's another test by the devil to see if we believe in God. I'm not kidding you. And then there's just people who are like, you know what? I need more facts. And there's not non-religious people who are just like, I don't really believe any of this. But a majority of people, you would think this would be the biggest news to ever hit. Like, back in the day when they landed on the moon and it was in big red print right on top of the newspaper, or Nixon resigns, that was huge headlines. You would think government officials or I keep seeing military officials coming forward to talk about UAPs. You'd think that would be in huge headlines. And guess what? It's just not going to be. It's not going to be. Because that particular instance challenges too many people's reality. And the problem with pretending is you just need to keep pretending that your reality is all of reality. Otherwise, you have to start balancing some other issues out that may not work in your spreadsheet. Okay, so the problem with pretending is that the crisis of faith that can come on when you're at this point, almost delusion is forced into a corner, is that can be a very violent outburst. So again, we're not talking, I know we've had the indictment back in June about the classified documents and all of that. These are different, you guys. The ones that are coming. These are big, heavy hitters. Fraud, conspiracy, January 6th stuff. I mean, this is big stuff. And still, it's important for those who believe that former President Trump was literally put here by Christ to believe that this is really who he is. And it's just another test from God. Because if Trump goes down for real, then where's their belief system? And really, this is where people are like, oh, Trump supporters, I can't stand them. Blah. You know what? I have people in my family who truly believe that Donald Trump is the best president to ever be. And I know those people in my family. And those people in my family have hearts of gold. And quite honestly, their biggest, I would say maybe their biggest issue is their heart is so big that they truly believe that nobody could be this rotten. And I don't even think Trump means to be rotten. He's just selfish. People are like, how can you think he's not evil? He's not evil. He's just the product of somebody getting their white male 70-something butt kissed for his whole entire life, you guys. I'm not kidding you. I think there's a lot more of us that might have gone that direction than we want to admit. So instead of thinking he's the problem, he is a symptom of an issue that we need to handle sociologically. And he's going to be held accountable for his part. But the crisis of faith that this brings on, the problem with pretending is a crisis. Because you can pretend so hard that your identity is invested in pretending. And, I'm going to pick on my own state of Montana for a minute. And I'm really not going to make any friends with this, but it's okay. If you know me, you do. If you don't, you don't. And God bless you all. So whatever. But on the Democratic side of things, okay, we are going to see some, not to the extent that some of the real right-wing folks would love to see, but we are going to see some issues come up with Hunter Biden. Not to the extent that they're claiming he's this or that. He's not quite that crazy. But there are some wiggles, guys, that Hunter was granted because his father was a very powerful political person. And not to the extent that they're saying, they're trying to deflect. They're going to deflect is what they're going to do. And they're doing it now. Hunter Biden's laptop, Hillary's emails. The problem with, and this is a larger issue, but the problem with, because we're talking about pretending, the problem with pretending that white privilege is not a thing, and the problem with pretending that white privilege is not a thing for white males, is that it eventually, the grandma sheet comes off, and you got to look at the privilege that you've been dealt and how you've chosen to allocate that privilege. And, there's going to be some hiccups with Hunter Biden coming up. Not to the degree that we're going to be seeing. He's not the sole cause of the Ukraine war and all of these things. But if Donald Trump is going to get his sheet ripped off, so is the Biden administration. So this kind of goes both ways. It's a time frame to be okay with the fact that, and by okay, let me define okay. It's a time frame to be okay with the fact that we've pretended, we faked it till we made it, right? We faked it till we made it. All the way through the 80s, the 90s, the early 2000s, the mid 2000s, and here we are. And we just can't do that anymore. We can't pretend that slavery was not devastating and heinous and real. We can't pretend that genocide of our first world people was fake. We can't pretend that suppressing women's rights doesn't make a difference. We can't pretend that systematically turning a privileged thumb up to males who happen to be Caucasian has not been happening. All the universe is asking us to do, gang, is to just stop pretending. That's it. And boy, is that hard for so many people. And it's especially hard for people who have been benefiting from the pretend universe they've been in. So, again, I know there's lots of you out there that aren't going to be happy to hear about the Hunter Biden thing, but Hunter did some things that weren't cool, and he's going to have to cough up what he did. No different from Donald Trump, And this is not gender specific, gang. It's just that we have, and I love my white guys out there, so please, I'm not picking on you guys. I think y'all would agree that perhaps just, historically, perhaps white males in the United States have had some cheats that the rest of us haven't had an opportunity to take advantage of. And me as a white woman, I've been able to take advantage of some of those cheats in ways that my beautiful sisters of color have not been able to. Even though I'm gay, I'm white. So that lets me float in a lot of other ways. And it's time we stop pretending this is a big deal. Now, there's a fine line between laboring the point about white male privilege and, white female privilege and all these things. There's a point to where laboring that becomes non-productive. The universe asking us to stop pretending is not the same as the universe asking us to flog every white male out there. That's not the same thing. Our people of color have been seeking a voice for a long time saying, can we just stop pretending that what happened to us, please stop saying that didn't happen. And I mean, you guys, as we get on into this month, we're going to see some nutty headlines. We're going to see people who are far down into the pretend zone of there's no racism in this country, trying to normalize the fact that people were enslaved. I know. You probably don't believe that. I barely believe it, and I'm looking into the future to see that. So, I mean, there's people who are going to be hanging on to their pretend universe like you would not believe. And that's not going to bode well for them, okay? So there's a lot that's going to go down in July. July is kind of a shakeout month. It's going to be a shakeout month for, for illusion. But I don't want to say illusion because illusion could be something you truly believe, and then you get up to the mirage and you're like, oh, shoot, I really thought there was like a pool of water here because of the refraction of the light on the sand. That's an illusion. Frickin' pretending, you guys, is knowing it's fake and doing it anyway. And we are going to get called out unilaterally across all human boards on the pretending this month. And it's going to keep going through August. Oh my God, August is going to be crazy. We're going to have more people coming out with more conspiracy theories in August. Gah, just crazy stuff to be able to support the pretend universe that people are living in. It's really rough. So again, we do not need to labor the points that we know are real. The reason that the universe needs us to stop pretending, again, willingly suspending disbelief in the face of fact. That's pretending. Willingly suspending disbelief in the face of fact. The universe just wants us to see what's here truthfully. Because you guys, what's here truthfully, even though it's got some problems, is gorgeous. Now, I don't mean Ukraine war. I don't mean white privilege. That's not what I'm talking about. It is gorgeous, this planet. It is gorgeous, our connection as human beings. That's what's real. And we keep pretending that the financial system is ruling the world. We keep pretending that crypto is what's going to make us a millionaire. You know what's going to make you a millionaire? Honest to God, is letting go of this pretend world that we have built. We've made an entire planet out of sheets, you guys. Are you hearing me? We've made an entire planet out of sheets on top of what's actually there. And all the universe is trying to do is to get us to recognize that what is there is far more powerful than what we've built on top of, you guys. That is literally the truth. So no, white men, you're not being picked on. It's just that we collectively have made this system happen. And ladies, women, we have emboldened this system just as much as our males have. There's actually more of us alive in the United States than there are our beautiful male counterparts. We put too much stress on men. We expect men to be inhuman. We expect them to be superheroes. We expect them to pay no attention to their feminine side. And you guys, masculine and feminine chi, every living thing, tree, ant, human, has masculine and feminine chi. Every living thing. And asking women to give up their masculine chi makes these weird, manipulative, neurotic, psychotic, absolutely terrors on wheels, fueled by estrogen, hatred, and genetics which say, shut up. So suppression isn't good for humans, okay? And asking males to give away their feminine chi is stripping them of some of the greatest strength they have. So we take our beautiful men, you guys, and we say, don't pay attention to that feminine chi. That's going to make you gay. You're not gay, are you? Don't be gay. Don't be happy, according to an 1800s dictionary, but I digress. We ask our males to ignore half of their chi, and it sends them into grand imbalance. And our poor males have to try to find that somewhere else. They're like, I think, you guys, this probably isn't the best thing to do. I think becoming just a psychotic testosterone-driven hammer is not working. So can we stop? Can we stop with the blame? And can we just accept that we are birthing a new time frame, and we can't do that if we keep pretending? What we have here, guys, our males, some of my very best friends are men. You know, the balanced masculine, you guys, is amazing. The divine masculine is the fist over your head to end your ass is the last resort. Males want to wrap their arms around everybody. They want everybody to do well. They want even the weakest of us to rise. And yeah, you know, there's a little ass kicking at the very end of that if you can't get your crap together, but that's the last resort. The divine feminine is not manipulative and backbiting and petty and crappy and psychotic as we get as women if we suppress the masculine. If we let the masculine come up to give the feminine strength, we are huge caregivers. We are stronger than you wouldn't believe. Guys, we squeeze life out of our body. We squeeze life out of, you know, a hole the size of a quarter. We squeeze life into this universe. Women are strong. So as we allow the genders and all of those who fall within binary genders, and there's a lot of us that fall within binary genders out there in the world. I'm a cisgendered female. I'm a she, her. I know many people who fall within just gray areas of our gender assignments. Our native people, gang, our indigenous cultures of this entire continent had multiple genders, had the idea of 8 or 12 genders within their tribal societies. They just let people be who they were. And guess what? It worked out a lot better. So if we stop pretending that we are stripping both genders from half their chi, if we stop pretending that we do this to control people, if we stop pretending that one of the most amazing scaffolds in governmental systems, which is the United States Constitution, if we stop pretending that that has been taken over by money and greed, and we just strip all the sheets off and we look at the basis of everything we have to work with, my God, you guys, that's phenomenal. The problem with pretending is it keeps us stagnated. It keeps us stilted. It keeps us from rising to who we truly are. And guys, I'm not saying the United States is the greatest country in the world. It's not. It's not. We have a constitution that would allow us the ingredients to create the most utopic civilization. But what we do with it is we just turn it over to lobbyists. And if we stop pretending that money is running this country, if we stop pretending that there's no such thing as a Democrat or a Republican, there are just groups that organize and raise money under a red and blue banner, if we stop pretending that we are anything but humans who truly want to support each other in our lives. My God, just look at that capability if we stop pretending. Look at it. The problem with pretending is it keeps us all short-sighted and fearful. Because as long as we're afraid, we're raising money for somebody. Seriously. As long as we're afraid, we're raising money for the NRA. We're raising money for the Democratic caucus. We're raising money for the Republican caucus. And I'm not saying don't believe in who you are. I'm not saying don't have your beliefs, you guys. That's not what I mean. We've just got to stop pretending that love is our baseline. And, here's poor Marianne Williamson out there trying to be president. That poor thing. She's going to get ignored into next year. I think she's a lovely human being, and I think what she's trying to do is huge. And because Marianne is talking about what I'm talking about, there's a lot of people that make money off of fear, you guys, and money is the god in the United States. So if we stop pretending that all of this is going on and we're just like, God dang it, I'm tired of hating my neighbor just because they have a Trump sign. Maybe that person is really struggling with how freaking awful our consumerist, avarice, greed-based nation has spiraled into selfishness. And maybe what they're doing is pretending that Americana and patriotism will get them out of that. And maybe they're doing that because that's the place they need to go psychologically, because they can't deal with the fact that human trafficking is real. And I'm looking at some big exposures on human trafficking, you guys. Mainstream exposures. I don't know if it's a TV show, movies, whatever. We're going to be exposed to some hideous stuff that we here in Montana see a lot with our missing and murdered Indigenous women. But we're looking at some big mainstream stuff coming out here that is big in this area. Maybe these folks with the Trump sign aren't just racists. Maybe they are not just people who hate gays. Maybe they're just people who don't know where else to turn to try to find something in their psyche that they could break down as wholesome. And I know there's a lot of you listening to this, especially my lefty friends, are like, how could you say that? That's not wholesome. Racism isn't wholesome. Guys, I have something important to tell you. And I don't know how many of you are going to receive it well, but I'm going to tell it to you anyway. It's something I've been telling you guys since 2017. Obviously there's always been, this country was built on slavery, racism, and genocide and greed. That is the fuel for Western expansion, right there. I think we can all agree that that's the reality of Western expansion. Yet, remember way back when Hillary was running for president, and all of a sudden we started seeing all of these weird headlines that were misleading. And, it would be like abc.news.com instead of abc.com. And it was the first time we really realized that fake news could be a thing. And the Obama administration had been shouting out about Russia infiltrating our news/messaging network for years. They were looking into it in 2014, you guys. So what happened is that a lot of people believed false headlines because they didn't check the URL, because the United States is an overall kind of a lazy and trusting country. And if Walter Cronkite says it's so, right? And really that's from a place of, it's kind of lazy, but it's also from a place of trust. Russia realized that we'd never had a big foreign takeover. Russia realized that we would trust whatever had a news logo on it. So there came the first fake headlines. But we believed it all. We went in like sheep. We believed it all. And what I'm about to tell you is that we did get invaded by a different country in terms of messaging formality. We had a lot of people posing as Americans who were Russian or Russian operatives who were creating these initial QAnon conspiracies, you guys. And because the Russians are so smart, God, Russian intelligence is way out there. There's a reason they always won chess matches, you guys, because there is just a genetic and innate intelligence there about playing the long game. And they knew that if they could introduce, which our government actually proved, that there was Russian disinformation interference with the Hillary Clinton election, the 2016 to 2017 election. They proved, our government did, that there was Russian interference in messaging with disinformation. Now, they have not been able to prove that Russia interfered with our voting machines. However, they did prove the disinformation portion. And that was just a pawn in Russia's long-term game. Their game was to get us to not trust the media. Then all of a sudden, after all this crap hits the fan, here comes the QAnon, right? Q, the mystery Q. Q is Russian. I've been telling you guys this for a year. Q is sitting back there eating pizzas, drinking vodka, laughing at how stupid Americans are, coming up with these ridiculous things, posting it all out there, claiming to be this or that. You guys, the thing about the Russian, I'm laughing because it's so obvious, and I cannot believe more people aren't talking about this. The Russian disinformation machine has a very specific tone. And it's a little harsh, and it's a little abrupt, and it's a little over the top, and it's more than we would author in our country. Now, I'm not saying our country doesn't have propaganda and misinformation purposefully, not dis, but mis. The United States government might throw us off track with UAPs and other things because they're trying to figure it out. But the Russian disinformation campaign, you guys, and this is what I'm saying some of you might have a hard time with, that's really embedded in our culture now. And we have huge swaths of Americans believing, thanks to Russia back in 2016, thanks to how trusting we were as a nation, or naive, or lazy, or insert your adjective, we have an entire section of our nation that thinks that something else is happening here that's not happening. So that's delusion. Then we have a bunch of us in between, thanks to Russia. There's a whole section that have broken off. They're following Trump. They're all in this big hole of, I can't trust the government, and the whole thing, talking freakouts about this sociopathic God that doesn't even exist. I mean, we've gotten ourselves so down a rabbit hole, and I swear to God, somewhere in Orlando, Florida, and I keep feeling them in Florida, are all these Russian operatives hanging out, eating pizza, drinking vodka, laughing, creating these conspiracies, pushing them along. And now they have enough Americans doing it, they don't really have to post that seed anymore. But this is the part where a lot of you might kind of cringe, but you guys, we have been invaded. We have had a foreign invasion in our nation quietly. In the same way that we're funding the Ukraine war, we're doing it not so quietly. Russia's war against Ukraine. We're not really technically getting into it, but we're funding the war. Now, I'm not saying we shouldn't. I think we should stand up for Ukraine. I really do. Yet, if this were a sitcom, Russia and the United States would be an opposite gender couple who'd be trying to hook up, and who wouldn't hook up until the very last episode of the last season, and they'd be hating each other, and there'd be this weird sexual tension, and they'd be doing all this terrible stuff to each other the entire TV series, and everybody watching would be going, oh my God, just hook up, the two of you. Obviously, that can't happen because we got some genocide and some really heinous activity that Russia's doing out in the open. And quite frankly, United States government, we're pulling our own garbage in the quiet, dark shadows of secret ops and all kinds of things. But we're not waging wars against countries and trying to push authoritarianism. And that's something that Putin is doing because he's ill. He's really ill. We're also going to be seeing coming up later this month and into August, we're going to be seeing some of our world leaders and even major leaders here in the United States suffering huge health problems. Because we're pretending they're fine. Russia's pretending Putin is fine. And I keep seeing some sort of stomach issue, stomach cancer, some kind of cancer in Putin. We've got, God bless our president, Joe Biden. He's doing the best he can. He's struggling in certain ways. There's other older members of our Congress. A lot of them are on the left. Diane Feinstein and God bless Nancy Pelosi. All these people. I never thought I'd say this, but God bless Mitch McConnell. You guys, he's really, really sick. He's really, really sick, and he's going to humiliate himself in the days to come. And I know there's a lot of people who listen to this podcast who think he's just the devil incarnate, and I've made some fun of old Mitch. Come on. But honestly, he's an old man, you guys, and nobody deserves to publicly humiliate themselves. And his health has been horrible for a long time. He fell. He was out of work for a long time in the government. There's going to be things coming where our aging members of Congress, we're going to have to see them as human. So let's stop pretending they're not human. For those of you that hate Nancy Pelosi, you know what? She's getting up there in age. It's going to be time for her to step down. The great Diane Feinstein, who is, of course, a Democratic political figure, Diane Feinstein is going to have to start stepping down because Diane Feinstein isn't going to be able to do what she always did. You guys, Mitch McConnell, the juggernaut Mitch McConnell, is going to have to step down because he's going to have health problems that are made known to everybody. Why is this happening? Well, it's not to fuel our generation wars. And I am not a fan of those. I'm a Gen Xer, man. We worked to eradicate labels across the board. And one of those labels are I hate. Back when I was a teenager, we had these shirts that said choose love. And, I think back to George Michael, who wore the choose love shirt. Gen X is about the love and getting rid of labels, and we're about coming together, you guys. And there's going to be a time where I'm going to feel sorry for Mitch McConnell because Mitch McConnell has terrible health problems, and he will, as I'm looking ahead, he's going to publicly humiliate himself. And we have to stop pretending that's not a thing. So if we can give grace to those, even if we disagree with their policy, whatever, for those on the right, please give grace to some of our aging folks on the left. For folks on the left, please give grace to those on the right who are aging because we're all human. And mortality is going to catch up to all of us. We need to stop pretending that we're immortal. We need to stop pretending that identity politics will save us from death. We will need to stop pretending that political ideation will save us from judgment. It won't. So the problem with pretending is it keeps us from our greatest strengths, you guys. And our greatest strengths, man, when I talk to our off-world friends, our off-world family, our greatest strength is that we are hooked up with one another. We are Bluetoothed to one another in the most phenomenal way. Our strength is in our grace. And grace is not, grace, you know what? The Christian religion it chaps my hide. The Christian religion has hijacked the term grace. Our strength is in our grace. Grace means unearned slack. I'm going to give you slack just because you're a person, just because you're human. I'm going to grant you slack because you're human. I'm going to grant myself slack because I'm human. The alpha bully of the 20th century needs to be put to bed. Okay? We're going to see more and more of our males claiming to be an alpha, an alpha, an alpha, an alpha. We're going to have media coming out that shakes the world down to the core through just stupid modalities. We're going to have movies that come out that shake people down to the core. And they're going to seem very innocuous, and they're going to be huge social statements. And they're going to be on gender, So, guys, grace is unearned slack. We have to stop pretending that we're all human. We have to stop pretending that our planet is fine. Whether you believe that we accelerated climate change or it's natural, it doesn't matter what you believe. We are in a climate change cycle, period. We have to stop pretending that somehow someone's going to make it all better by pretending. It's not going to work anymore. The problem with pretending is it lobotomizes us from the portion of our spirit that is the most connected, the most creative, and the most powerful. If we simply are willing to sit back with some grace and look at one another. Look at why Trump did what Trump did. Look at why Diane Feinstein's hung on for so long, even though she's so elderly. Let's look at why we've gotten into this place and just make better choices with unearned slack that we can grant one another. That's called grace. Guys, if we stop pretending, we are powerful and we are loving. We're freaking superheroes that are unstoppable. But we have to stop pretending that fear is not trying to fundraise, that corporocracy is not running this country. We must stop pretending. And don't come out in rage and judgment. Don't let your rage and fear take over. Just look at it and go, well, yeah, that's a thing. So what do we all have in common? Now, I know this challenges a lot of people. It challenges all of our opinions. I have a lot of opinions, you guys. And I was telling a good friend of mine just the other day that I sincerely wonder what it would be like to truly just be able to full on just not stand somebody, just hate their guts without being able to see inside of them and see why it is they became the way they are. I mean, God, you guys, even our villains in DC and Marvel movies, we are even showing the reason the villain became the villain so that we can have some empathy for that person. Not because we, as a lot of our very hardcore, frightened Christian conservative communities are saying that DC and Marvel are trying to exemplify evil because we create empathy for the people who do evil things. Maybe we're just trying to teach everybody that we're all human. Not that evil is okay. Not that victimizing and killing the multitudes is okay. Not that defrauding people is okay. But maybe we're trying to show people that those actions only come through great damage to the psyche, to the spirit, to the self. And maybe if we could stop pretending that that's unusual and stop pretending that that only happens to certain people. The problem with pretending is it keeps us from our highest gifts, power, bridge building aptitudes, and vision. Because we're too busy buying in to the bullcrap. So guys, the rest of July into August is going to be kind of a spicy pickle here. And I invite everybody to lead with compassion, to lead with grace, to try to understand that if somebody has a Go Joe Biden sign in their yard, that they're not a communist. If they have a Go Trump sign in their yard, that they're not a racist piece of jerky a-holism. Let us actually get past all of this. Stop pretending we are the labels that make it easier in shorthand to get through life in a very ineffective way unless you're a fundraiser. And let's lean into our greatest gifts and talents. Because the problem with pretending means you're never real. And if you're never real, you're never embracing what you are. And if you never embrace what you are, you do not embrace your purpose. And if you do not embrace your purpose, then you do not bring your greatest power to this incarnation. And from a practical standpoint, you're probably going to have to come back and do it all again. So if you're really, really, really crazy about doing that, keep denying your purpose. Keep pretending. But somehow, I get the feeling that you'd rather just do it right this time. And gang, that's what we're here to do. So lead with love. Lead with compassion. Lead with grace. Stop pretending. Have grace with those who are hanging on to pretending because it's all they've got psychologically. And let's extend an olive branch so we can start to feel safe to be who we truly are. And for those who lead out with victimization and hatred, gang, they think that's who they are, but that's not who they are. That's who they become to belong. And maybe there are some people so damaged psychologically and emotionally and spiritually that that's really who they are at this time frame. And it's going to be a rough road for those folks. So let's try to give them at least a place to land, because they're not going to feel like they belong at all. So let's stop pretending. And I will see you next podcast.